Greetings, salutations, welcome back to Ketamine Connections. Woo-wee. Am I excited to introduce today's episode with Rose Wild. Rose Wild is indeed a wild woman, barefoot, singing, dancing, stumbling, and somehow blazing her way through the loops of life. Since unraveling truth claims within her own religious upbringing, she has spent the last 8 years exploring different avenues of spirituality and mindfulness. Her inquisitive nature has led her to plant roots in the grounding truths of reality. Rose is a life coach graduate out of Coach Training Alliance, as well as a certified psychedelic integration and addiction recovery coach from Being True to You. Her business, OIC, focuses on breaking free from debilitating thoughts and developing new patterns to observe, innovate, and celebrate life. She hosts group events which highlight women she admires, where everyone attending is safe to explore one's self and refuel with connection to others. That is this amazing, amazing woman's introduction to herself. And as amazing as this introduction is, I hope that as you tune into this episode, you get a little bit more insight into not just how amazing Rose is, but also how amazing her transformation is, how amazing it is that big transformations can start from seemingly little shifts, and how that is available to any of us with or without ketamine. Rose has spent the past 3 years working at Advanced Wellness and Pain, Arizona's leading ketamine clinic. And this episode is about transformation. It's about self-awareness. It's about healing beyond the clinical setting. We talk about integration, why it's essential for lasting change, and how ketamine's multi-session structure requires a little bit additional patience for that. We talk about different tools and techniques, some of Rose's go-to methods for processing emotions, building self-awareness, and really living an empowered life. We dive so deep into self-love and empowerment, how to know yourself deeply and understand yourself, your emotions, and how to feel empowered in every part of your life. And that is something that I have known to be true about Rose since we met 3 years ago. And I'm so excited for Rose to be on the show and bring her wisdom on emotions, the subconscious mind, how these little shifts, right, can create a life that is just so different than before those shifts, the ripple effects, the journey, right? The first step, those small shifts being the small step towards something much, much greater. And aside from understanding and really getting how a small shift can lead to a big shift or open up your world in a big way, I really hope that Rose's story inspires a lot of self-love. I know her to be a really, really embodied self-love advocate. And so I really hope that you get some magic in the transmission of this episode and enjoy. We're live.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Rose. I'm so excited you're here. Love the pre-talk of this podcast. I almost wish that part's recorded.
Me too.
So because it's like just the preamble, right? The preamble to everything that's about to happen. So Rose, I'm so excited you're here. Why don't you start off in the same way that we start every one of these podcast interviews off, which is if you can go back and tell the you before this journey, as far back as you can go, lifetimes back, go back and tell yourself before all of this, one thing, what would it be?
I just have to say how actually challenging this question was to answer. It was like bullet point after bullet point of if I can only say one thing, would it be? And there's so many layers in life that you get to unpeel, and to give just one thing is gift in itself to be able to narrow it down. What I came up with was I would tell myself to learn and explore me first and to chart that and document it so that I learn how to navigate my internal world and I get that out of me in a way that then I can observe it without being attached to it. That I can observe, what do I like? What was I like as a child? And it's my own documenting. That's my truth that nobody can take away from me. And I'm learning myself in a way that you just can't any other way. So I think that would be a brilliant gift to carry throughout my lifetime, and one that I'm trying to develop now. And I'm seeing and understanding the importance of documenting and getting things out of my head so that I can see them.
Wow, what a powerful piece of advice, right? Learn yourself first, which I know we were talking before we hit record where we want to guide this conversation. There's so many places to guide it, and I think that's the perfect route to go. Why don't you explain to anyone listening what is your connection to the ketamine space?
Sure. I work at Advanced Wellness and Pain. We are the number one Arizona ketamine clinic. We do ketamine like nobody else. And it's weird to say that because I'm like, well, that's just a gimmick that everybody says. We're the best, we're number one. But I've worked there for over 3 years, and I'm like, still to this date, I've not heard or seen another ketamine clinic that does it the way that we do it. So I got introduced to advanced wellness from a former patient. Somehow we had mutual friends in common. She like Instagrammed me saying, "Do you want to go out for lunch?" I never in my dreams say yes to that to like some stranger that I never know. But during that time in my life, I made a promise to myself that I was going to say yes and I was going to do things different. And so then this gal pops up and I went out to lunch with her, and a little bit of my background at that point, what I had graduated from my first coaching certification with Coach Training Alliance. When she introduced me, she's like, "You need to be a coach for them going through." Because that is such an integral part of our process is that integration coaching, which is how I met you. So when I first got hired, I thought it was going to be for like coaching. It ended up that they were partnered with Being True to You, which I ended up getting certified through their program as well. But I just ended up at the receptionist desk, and which was great. It was a brand new, startup company. It was just me and the three doctors. And so we really just built this thing from the ground up, and I got to be a part of that, kind of shifted more into the I don't know, just kind of the overseer and making sure all the gears are moving and step into a firsthand, perspective of what ketamine is like personally from my experience, and what is it like for people experiencing ketamine as a psychedelic medicine in this doctor setting, with uh, a process to it. And there have been days, especially the first year, that I just would see people come in, and I mean, you can just feel it. You can read it on their faces. You can see it in their demeanor, what they are carrying. And I
Mhm.
have to take a picture of them, and you can just see it in their picture, coming in with depression. Yes, you see that they're carrying so much heaviness. And then after 2 to 3 weeks of going through this series of 6 ketamine infusions with the integration coaching, comments come out of their mouths like, "I feel reborn again. I feel like myself again. I just free, And I'm just watching them come in the door and go out the door. And I'm like, one after another, after another. And I'm like, is this too good to be true? Like, are people faking this? Like, come on, and now 3 years later, it hasn't stopped. And I'm just like, you can't argue with reality, what you literally see in front of your face. And the way that ketamine and integration can really change people's lives for the better is an incredible gift. There's definitely so much more to the ketamine side of things as far as their results and really the life shift. And I think that's where some people can really struggle because they can come in with the mindset of, oh, ketamine is going to fix me.
Hmm.
And they put all of their hopes and all of they're relying on that medicine to do all the work. When in reality, the medicine opens the door and creates this feeling of mobility, of giving you the ability to make changes, and this euphoric feeling of like everything's working out and it's positive, and I'm going to do it without this burdensome feeling of heaviness or feeling stuck. It's I'll describe to patients calling in like that feeling of depression. Like, I know I should go on a walk. I know going on a walk would make me feel better, but can't. I can't get myself out of bed. I can't get myself to lace up my shoes and go out the door. Something is blocking me. And ketamine is that block blaster of now all of a sudden the door is open and it's my choice whether I walk through it, and now when I try, I can. And the
Hmm.
more you build on that, the more that will solidify as who you are. When you're consistent with those new routines, now all of a sudden life is just yours. And you get to have this self-empowerment that I don't know another way to get it, unless you have incredible parents. Not
Even the
many of
most
us do.
incredible parent, yeah, I mean, even the most incredible parents, right? It's their parenting and what they know, and every child, I mean, you have kids, right? Every child is so
Mm.
different, and, I spent 7 years as a classroom teacher, and it's just even the most amazing parents, life is suffering, there's stuff that happens, and then it's, like, up to the demeanor, right, of, like, how long do we carry it around, and some people
Yeah.
just don't know how to put it down, and that's okay, because where are we taught that, right? Yeah, but I
What
love.
a what a missed opportunity in life that would be to not go through that struggle of finding yourself and feeling uncomfortable in something enough that you personally decide, I'm going to do something about this. And it has to come from you. People can influence, oh, I think this could help you. Maybe you should look into this. We don't sign a patient unless they understand you are coming in to do hard work. It's going to be uncomfortable, but the payoff for going through that uncomfortable shift, I think is worth it.
That's the sweet spot, right? It's change in the subconscious mind is really challenging. The devil, right? Even when someone is living in a misery, when that misery is familiar, it becomes comfortable, right? Like misery
Yeah.
can be comfort zone, and we see that so much in our culture. And it's that tipping point of like, okay, I'm so miserable that the pain of change is just like, a little bit more or a little bit less. It has to be that like literally like 51-49. Like once the scales
Yeah.
tip a little bit, because a lot of people coming to ketamine have never tried psychedelics, right? And so they're really embarking on an experimental therapy, on an experimental journey, and that's part of the goal, the mission of this podcast is to normalize it and to introduce stories from people that are working with ketamine, whether doing it for themselves or working in the ketamine space, to kind of bring it back down to earth and show people what's possible. And I love what you said about ketamine opening the door. And I've heard two different things that it opens the door to, just in what you were saying, but I would love to hear it from you. What do you think it opens the door to?
Number one, your internal world. I mean, it opens the door to your subconscious. You are consciously having an experience where you get to witness what your subconscious is holding. And I like to tie in like what your nervous system is holding, what your body's holding, what is your internal world. And so it opens the door for that to, it's not like, oh, open the door and I'm going to walk in necessarily. It's like you open the door and you just sit back and it'll come to you. You don't need to do anything. Just watch it and you kind of navigate. Okay, I see you. You can go that way. Oh, I see you. I'm going to lean forward into that. Ooh, that's really uncomfortable. I'm not really ready for that. Can I dive in anyway? And so it does feel more like this is coming up and I'm just receiving rather than I'm like, you know, diving in. To investigate. It just, things will flow to the surface that are ready.
Absolutely. And I love what you were saying earlier too about, ketamine is not going to fix your problems, right? I say this in pretty much every first session that I do, right? Ketamine is not going to fix your problems. It's going to make you fixing your problems accessible and possible. Like you were saying, right? If someone's depressed and needs to get up and go for a walk, it feels impossible when you are in that heavy, dense state of depression. Ketamine shifts that, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just felt like going for a walk. But then it's in the subconscious mind when we're working with patterns and we're working with loops. I say this a lot, right? We think we when we're in it, when we're in depression, in anxiety, in the PTSD, in all of that, right? It's like this is a big problem and it needs a big solution. And then actually it's like, well, have you drank enough water? Have you
Yes.
looked at the sky?
Isn't it hilarious? And we really try to emphasize tools. We want to give people lots of tools and practice. Can you recognize, I don't like this feeling? What is the feeling? Be curious about it. I'm feeling a feeling that I don't like. I really don't like it. Okay, am I feeling more on the anxious side? Name it. Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling disappointment? So can you name it? Okay, I got the name, and now what's my tool for when I'm feeling that? And I will tell you, I've felt like really emotionally great like this whole week, really excited for today. And then all of a sudden today at work, there was a situation that just got me flustered and a little bit irritated. It didn't belong to me at all, but I was, had to be involved in it because it was at work. And I like on the drive home, and when I got home, I'm like, oh, I'm just feeling irritated. And there's no way that I'm going to show up as myself on this podcast if I'm coming in with that irritated feeling. I'm just going to want to rush through. My answers aren't going to be, thought out and me. And so I had to bust out some of my tools. What do I do when I feel irritated? No matter what it's about, I feel something in my body and it's causing my thoughts to, go down these paths, whatever. For me, a go-to is always just move it out. How do you get it out of you? So I have lots of tools that I use for that. This one, my little 12-year-old baby girl has some silks, like some aerial silks in our
Yeah.
living room, and that did it. All I had to do was like spin around a little bit and just like twist them and wave them, and that was enough. I'm like, all right, it's gone. And it can be that simple. And I think people can get hung up on that is like, I'm ready to put in the work and just really grind, and they can almost be disappointed if it's too easy. But then you realize, oh my gosh, it's that easy. And it goes back to what you were saying of like that comfort versus change. You start to learn, I can change just something, just a degree, and the outcome of that creates this new level of comfort. And I'm learning the more I do that, the more comfortable I am in that space. So you're elevating your comfort zone. And let's elevate it a little bit more and a little bit more. And every time you elevate, that's the part that's like the come up that feels disgusting. And you're like, what did I just do? And I don't like this. And then you get to that new level and you're like, oh, I could do that 100 times because you've felt the payoff. So it's pretty fun to recognize how simple things can really be to make a huge impact.
You know, yes, and simple isn't easy,
For sure.
right? Like when I know I have, we're human, right? I think I have this conversation so much in my work of like, okay, are you being a human or are you trying to be a robot, right? Because robots operate the same way every day, no matter what, like input, output, input, output. Humans, we are complicated. We have things that, bring up emotions, right? Emotions are messy. So we've been trying to put them away, right? And then all of a sudden the ketamine's opening the door to emotions, like you were saying. Oh, I don't like those. We're such a hierarchy society, right? Like good vibes only, right? It's like, well, guess what? In the emotional state, in the vibration frequency of emotion, there's no hierarchy. Emotions are energy in motion. They're coming up to push some energy through. And if you are like, nope, don't like anger, like, all right, bro, good luck with that one, like you do that it's different for different people and it starts coming out sideways. And then we
Mm.
see things that are just like wild all over. I mean, the news, the internet, wherever people are getting their media from, of people just like spontaneously combusting like
Yeah.
out in the world because they don't have tools, right? So it's like the ketamine is a tool that opens the door to more tools.
Yes. I love that. Um, that gave me a thought and I want to remember it.
Take your time.
Go back like what you said right before that. Right before
People
ketamine
stuffing down
was
their
the tools.
emotions or energy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So going back to how you were talking about people like stuffing down the emotions, it's an interesting thing because I always think once when I learn something, everyone must already know it. Like I'm the idiot new to this, and it's like the world's like, "Oh, you finally decided to catch up." And I'm like, "Oh, all of you guys knew this already and I was the idiot?" And so it feels like working the space, especially people have this understanding of when you push your emotions away, they're gonna come back. You don't really push them away. I'll put in a little plug. Everyone should go see Inside Out too. Like my kids razz me so much. They're like, "You never go one day without mentioning that movie." Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But part of it is you see them throwing these useless emotions all the way back to Riley's subconscious. And then guess what ends up happening? Spoiler alert. They all have to come to the surface. And so it seems like, oh, yeah, people know that, right? Just let your emotions be what they are. And it's just not that way. And what you said about it's just energy in motion, it makes me curious about two things. One, if people could have a relationship with their emotions that they understand my emotions are my intimate experience of life, telling me how I personally feel about that. No one else can tell me that. And so to shove your emotion of anger down is such a disservice to yourself and your ability to even feel that emotion in the first place. And what a gift that is when you learn, oh, I can almost be this. I don't even know what you want to call it. I'm sure there's so many words that you could use, but I am this host for energy to flow through me. And that allows you to almost disconnect in a way that allows you to, without it feeling so sticky. I'll tell you, one of my personal experiences with ketamine was my second infusion. I'm, um, I had experience with a little bit of PTSD, mostly anxiety. I'll have my little, I call them my depressies. I don't really get depression, debilitating depression, but we all have our cycles. And so my little depressies. But this ketamine infusion, my second one, I had this moment, and I'm so grateful. Little side tangent. We People can like audio record during their
Mhm.
infusions. We encourage that because sometimes you might say something that you want to remember, and you think that you can remember when you're in the medicine, and then you get out and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what was that thing?" And it was so profound and life-changing. So audio recording is a great idea. So I'm audio recording on this session that I'm having and video recording as well. And I'm so glad because I don't remember this happening at all. but I made this noise that was like, it sounded like something disgusting coming out of my body, is really the only way that I can describe it. Like I was like hacking up, like just like darkness, is what it felt like in my mind, what I was experiencing. My anxiety came out of me and almost as like this black orb outside of me that I can observe. And all of a sudden, it was this realization of like, oh, I am not anxiety. I feel anxiety, and anxiety as an emotion can use me as a host, as an outlet to maybe anxiety wants to experience life too. And that's the only way that it knows how. And it uses me as a host to be in this life form to experience life. I don't know. But, having that moment and realizing I am a clean vessel and I can be so aware of what comes in by what I'm experiencing, what my emotions are telling me, what my thoughts are telling me. And I don't have to hold on to that. I don't have to let that embed in my nervous system or in my being in a way that now I'm just controlled by my anxiety and I don't have a choice. So being able to separate yourself from your emotion, I think that happens a lot. It's a gift that ketamine can do. Without being so attached to it, you become almost the observer of it and almost like yeah, the observer. You're watching it and you can be curious about it and, pull it apart and stretch it and really learn it and accept that, okay, that's a part of me that will be with me my whole life. They don't go away. But again, it's going back to like, okay, if I'm feeling it and it's not doing anything productive right now, what's my tool that I got to grab out?
That's a really powerful story. Thank you for sharing that experience. Had you, before ketamine, had that dissociation between you and your anxiety, or you thought you and your anxiety were one? Or like, we hear people say like, "Oh, I'm an anxious person," or like, I'm anxious, I'm depressed." Like we see people associate into their like mental states in that way. So had you
Yes.
had that break?
In a way, yes. In a major way, but that has grown over time, like the ability to do that over time. But where it first started was actually back in 2015. I was raised very religiously, um, and that was my life. I literally did not know like normal world. Okay. It was like my favorite way to describe it is like I'm living in a fishbowl and you think that that fishbowl is the entire universe. And then that fishbowl breaks or someone says, "Hey, let's swim out of this thing." And you follow. And then you realize that there's a whole ocean and you're like, "What?" And that fishbowl just shatters. And so, in that moment where everything that you thought was all of a sudden isn't, you dissolve. I mean, what is reality? What is truth? What is everything? And you have to rebuild yourself from that point up. So during that time, when I'm just like derailing everything, you start to understand your emotions more and you start to understand how someone can use your own emotions to manipulate you. And so you better learn your own emotions. Otherwise, they're going to become a weapon used against you. And so it's been easier to disassociate, if you want to use that word, from my emotions so that I can observe them. And I really struggled with that for a long time because I felt like, well, then you just turn numb and you're a zombie, and emotions are life, and emotions for a long time really did rule my life. And continuing to practice stepping out further and observing them and having a broader perspective, now all of a sudden you can see similar patterns in different ways of how emotions are used to manipulate, good or bad. It's not all negative. Um, Using emotions is powerful and it's wonderful. And so I feel like understanding them is very opposite of turning numb. It allows you to use them more appropriately and in a way wider range because you're not ashamed of them anymore. You give them the space that they want. You don't judge yourself for having them or thinking thoughts. You don't judge it when it comes out. But that comes with learning how to let them out in a safe way, having people around you if you need that support in a safe way. So there's so many layers and so many avenues of like, how do you get to this point that it feels like you're not imprisoned by your emotions? And then to flip that with the freedom of emotions, and even the feeling of like irritation, it almost makes me a little giddy because then I'm like, whoo, this is an intense emotion. First of all, go me for the ability to feel it. Where else am I gonna, have the ability to feel something so overwhelming and then to celebrate that and then to have the self-empowerment and the self-authority to take care of yourself in those emotions, it just turns into a really beautiful way to experience life. It's very open.
Yeah. I want to say like 100 things right now. Which way do I
Mhm.
want to go? Which way do I want to go? Okay. Emotions being a choice. Emotions being a choice. Okay, so Dr. Brene Brown, amazing, like such a
Yes,
sage of our lifetime, our generation, like wow, right? And I remember
absolutely.
a long time ago reading something that she wrote where she was like, guess what, you don't get to cherry pick emotions. You don't get to like say, I don't want to feel anger, irritation, disappointment, whatever, but I do want to feel like the joy, happiness, like elation, whatever. And so there's so much freedom in that, right, of being open to all the emotions, and then having the skill, right? Because it is a skill and we're not taught this anywhere. And I'm like you, I'm like, when I learn something, I'm like, damn, I'm the last person on the planet to know this, But it's actually, I've been reframing that for a few years of saying, okay, if I didn't know something, there's at least 100, if not 100 million other people that didn't know this in a sea of 8 billion people on this planet. So I do like to normalize like when I'm learning something new. So it was new for me to learn the equanimity of emotions, right? The skill set of letting them in and welcoming them, and then choosing of like, yeah, I could be irritated. I in my work I like to talk about this like as an invitation, right? Like something at work happens and it's like, here's an invitation to have a shitty rest of your day. Do you want this in, like, you're going to take this invitation?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And
But
can you
before
stop
you
and
know
say,
that,
do I want to follow that thought? Or do I want, to stop
but that's the
and
thing, right?
pick
It's
one?
like most people don't know that, do I want to follow that thought or do I not? Or even the level of skill that you're talking about of, okay, I'm feeling this emotion. What's the tool, right? What's the appropriate tool, right? It's like, what's that phrase? It's like, if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail, right?
Yes.
So learning different tools for different emotions, but at the end of the day, learning how to approach emotions and then say, okay, yeah, here's an invitation to be hooked by this emotion, to go on this wagon ride of whatever it is, but I'm going to make a different choice. And fun story in that, so I have a history of a lot of things. Depression's one of them. I like depressies, though. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah. You don't have depression, but yes, that's coined by my best friend. We'll do our little depressies.
Yeah, I mean, it used to hook me like when I was much younger. I have these diagnoses that I carried around for a while. And at one point I was dating someone, and this is not that long ago. This is like maybe 3 years ago. And I was dating someone and I was in a depressive state and like in a pity party mode, and it was going on for a while. And this person that I'm dating for like a while was like, why don't you just choose to be happy? And I was enraged. I was like, "This is a do you think this is a choice? You think I'm
Yeah.
choosing," and I and inevitably, I actually broke up with this person for this reason, because I was
Mm.
just like, "They don't understand me." And, fast forward not that much after that, I think, like, within a year after that, where I was like, I got I lovingly call, what I got to the basement of my subconscious mind. There's, like, these layers that we go
Wow.
through, right? What you were saying, right? Like, you don't have to do anything, like, just open the door and see what comes forth, and it comes in layers because we build trust with these subconscious parts of ourselves, right? It's like the
Mhm.
core wound that is a fortress, like, deep, deep in the subconscious. You gotta cross a few moats to get there. You're not
Yeah.
just gonna go straight there, but you're building trust with yourself. You're building rapport with yourself. You're learning how to feel your emotions, how to like be you, right? What you started this whole podcast with, right? Like learn to be you. You're learning that. And yeah, I got to the basement of my subconscious mind and I looked around and I saw like I literally had this visual. It was with a psychedelic, and I saw a visual of all of my like little demon goblin army, of just like all the like icky unintegrated parts. And
Mhm.
I was just like, wow, it's really a choice, It's like when you open the door Inside Out is such a great movie, right? It's like who's who's in the driver's seat right now, right? Is
Ye
who's got the wheel? This is like Inside Out is just a representation of internal family systems. It's a great tool to use in so many ways, and it's just like, okay, who's got the mic, right? You don't have to pass the mic, it's just like anger's coming up and you're like, I'm gonna give him a piece of my mind. It's like, just pass. Yes, valid, true, we're gonna deal with that. Pass the mic.
Mhm.
Who else wants to chime in on this?
Yes. And something as simple as that, like, how do you understand your subconscious? What do you mean by all these emotions? How do I blah blah blah? It's very confusing. Something so simple as that picture that they painted for us. Here's the control panel, and here are 15 emotions trying to be the ones in control because they really feel like they know what's best. They know how to handle this situation to protect you. Ultimately, that is what your nervous system is trying to do. Survival, down to the bone. Let's just survive. How do we survive? Ooh, patch up that wall. Okay, we're doing great. And we're gonna be mindful so that doesn't happen again, and then it blasts open and oh, that didn't work, And so just realizing like all of your emotions serve their purpose. They all love you. They all are there for your best interest to protect you, but also this beautiful gift to be able to experience them all. All of these new characters come in based on all of our life experiences, and oh, what's this emotion all about? And then you just get to learn. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna hang out with anxiety today. Okay, thanks for doing your best. I'll take it from here. It's just great to simplify it in a way that allows you to have that relationship with yourself, make it a little bit easier to start recognizing. So I'm curious for you being a coach, is there something that you start your clients on with like, well, what's step one of learning how to be aware of my emotions and all of these things?
It's such a great question. I think people are more aware than they give themselves permission to be. And I think when you have someone asking you, wow, this really crappy thing happened. How do you feel about that? And then all of a sudden it just starts pouring out, right? And if it doesn't
Mm.
come pouring out, then it's like that soundboard of like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Like this is like I call it it's fine syndrome, right? We're walking around in our society and it's fine syndrome, right? Like this terrible thing happened. It's fine. This person hurt my feelings. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And then there's like you're saying, right? Like patching up that wall, but that wall is bursting at the seams, and people don't know the subconscious load that it takes to be holding that door shut. And that
Yes.
load is running. So how do I teach people to, first of all, I ask them about it, right? And then I pull out a feelings wheel.
Ooh.
Love a good feelings wheel. I'll post it in the show notes for sure. Of like you start with that core emotion, right? Like anger, sadness, whatever is in that happy whatever that core,
Yeah.
and then you can build out to other layers. So if someone's like, I don't even know how I feel about that, it's like, well, it sounds like you're, it's like, where do we start? Angry, it's like from angry, it's like, oh, disappointed, and it's like rejected, I feel rejected, oh, I feel rejected, okay, this is what rejection feels like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, they get a little excited about it. I know what I'm feeling. I know what this is. Now, what do you do? What do you want to do with it? Oh, that's
Right, and
beautiful. I love that.
that's the punchline of the ketamine work, right? It's like it opens the door and it's just like, okay, here's all the things that are coming through. What do you do with them? So do you want to speak, cuz I know you're so passionate about the integration work and like the work that comes after the ketamine. So do you want to speak to some of the tools that you recommend to people and that you just know work?
I'll go back to like just document it. And I have a issue. Like, I was taught to journal at a very young age, and it was like the Dear Diary, since I was a very youngin. And it was this feeling of like, I need to adequately express who I am as a person, and so I feel understood. And always this thought of like, someone's going to read this and paint a picture of who I am, the side that they don't get to see all the time. There's like the very intimate side of me. And it's shifted to, look, what are the facts? What are your truths? Bullet point. You don't need to tell every detail of a story. What did you get out of it? And maybe shift the way that you have done something in the past. If journaling is not your thing, maybe just do it a little bit different and see how that works for you. So I remember when I very first got into like, what the heck is mindfulness, I did a 30-day challenge that I had to list. I am so excited. I can't tell you. I am so excited to tell you. My calendar reminder popped up on this day 8 years ago is when I got my first journal, and it was like, this is my mindfulness journal. And I didn't even know what that meant. And the first couple pages were like the first podcast that I ever listened to about mindfulness. So the first challenge was writing every day, writing three things that I'm grateful for, three things that I was proud of myself for, and three things that I desire to have in my life. That was easy enough, and I did it, and I can go back and you can see, my God, day 45, guess what? Something incredible happened, and I just kept going with it. And you just realize, like, whoa, my life was really changing during that time. Oh, I had never been proud of myself before. I had
Mhm.
never given myself permission to say I desire something in my life. And so all these brand new things that, like, just try it the first time. The first time is always going to feel awkward and challenging. And just keep doing it with the mindset of like, I'm just collecting data. I'm just gonna see what it's like. No, I don't need to attach to it. Just see what it's like. See what it's like. See what comes out of you, and just let it come out of you. It's nothing to do with, oh, that's who you are as a person, and this is like written in stone. If someone thinks that, then they don't understand themselves. They don't understand life. They don't understand all the dynamics of the human experience. So let yourself have your own experience and realize that you have the ability to maneuver and have your inputs and be an active creator in your life, not just the receiver of these external stimuli.
What a powerful day. 8 years ago today, you
I can't
started
believe
journaling.
it. Yes.
I love journaling. I've been a journaler since I was a little kid, and I picked up a thing, and I don't know how I knew this, but I went to the fridge and I wrote dairy. I wrote Dear Dairy because I didn't know how to
Oh, I love it.
spell, but I was like, I think they're similar. And I love journaling. I just learned something so fascinating about journaling that it actually activates a different part of the brain. So it is a way to bypass the critical factor of the mind. So when we're journaling, yes, that journaling of recounting is one thing, but when we're letting it free flow and we're letting it come through, it's actually activating a different part of the brain that helps to rewire these synaptic connections that make up who we are.
I mean, truly, your words. are your spells. You know, if you want to get witchy about it, you say something negative and see where you get when you follow that thought. See how you feel when it comes out. Is that benefiting your life to focus on that negative thing? And now say something positive. You don't even have to believe it. Just say it and let it come out and see. Just again, experiment, play, see what is different. It's really fun to start playing with your mind and realizing, the ultimate trifecta is my thoughts create my emotions, create my reality from my action. And it just goes in a loop and it connects to people. My words to you create thoughts or create an emotion. If you want to go one over the other, it's the loop that they're all interconnected. Your thoughts, your emotions, your action, always the loop, the cycles, giving and receiving and that reaction to each other. And so if you just, oh, let me twist that one a little bit, now I have a different outcome. Okay, let me tweak that a little bit more. You can become a little tinkerer of your life.
I love
Who
that.
doesn't love
Become the
Tinkerbell, right?
I love that. Who doesn't love a good fairy? Um, but it's I wish more people knew that our thoughts produce chemicals in the body. And the more powerful the thought, the more powerful the chemical, and there is that feedback loop, right, of like, oh, give me another hit of that cortisol, give me another hit of that adrenaline, give me another hit. And it's creating our whole life. And then people are like, oh, I don't, well, that thought feels uncomfortable. It's like you haven't gotten used to those chemicals in your brain, in your body. And
Hmm.
it's all of this is designed to, like, you are in your comfort zone. How is that going for you?
Yeah. And people
Right?
can be addicted to that. This is a negative thought, and that thought is powerful. And I get some sort of sadistic high with when things are in chaos. There are people, narcissists, who feed off of that chaos. That feels good to them. They want more. But what are they doing for their internal world? I don't know. I can only imagine that it's miserable, but maybe for them it feels comfortable. But what's the outward repercussion of that? So it's learning, what is that emotion producing? What is the pattern? What is the outcome of that emotion? And can I observe, is that benefiting my life? Is it benefiting society? And shifting, trusting that, guess what? You can get that same high, that same, dopamine hit, by doing something beneficial. You can, that, why do they call it a runner's high? You reach this
Right.
point that you're just like, whoa, there's that chemical release. Okay, so instead of, turning to something that is detrimental to your health or for people that you love or society, can you go get your runner's high dopamine hit? Can you go get your hit from creating something and putting something out into the world? You'll learn shifting. That is like, man, that's a good high. I will push past the uncomfortability to get that high versus the easy release of being mean to someone. It's easy to be negative. It's easy to be mean. You're just, bleh, I don't care. I don't care. I'm just going to project it on everybody. It takes intelligence, it takes emotional maturity to say, okay, I'm going to harness this power. And as an innate creator, I'm going to use my ability to create something positive, and that payoff is always worth it. How many examples do you have? You're given something and it's not appreciated. When you earn it, you appreciate it. When you put in the work, you appreciate it. Nobody wants to hear that, but it's so true. And so I love the little like reels that are like the girls are walking outside all mad and they're like, oh, I'm going on my walk for my stupid mental health, and they're
Yeah.
like trudging down the snow. But then they walk back and they're like, la 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 la, walking back to their house all happy because guess what? You got that dopamine release and now your body's thanking you for it and your muscles are stronger and you feel good and you're taking care of yourself and you just realize life is more enjoyable when I do those things, when I love myself. I think that's truly what it comes down to, is how do I learn myself, and how do I learn how to love myself? And one more thought on that I'll say is learning what it is to love something. And I have to admit I stole this off of an Instagram video that I saw, but they were talking about a plant. And I love plants. I love plants. I kill every plant that I have ever owned. So am I loving plants? No, because I'm not watering them like I should. I'm not studying and learning them like I should. I don't know when to put them in the sun appropriately. So I can appreciate plants. Yes, I love plants, but I'm not loving plants. And so for me, like, oh, Rose, I love you. And then ask the question after that, am I loving you? Am I helping you grow? Am I helping you develop these patterns that make you feel good? Do you feel good in your body? Do you feel like that's being reciprocated from your external world? Is your internal world matching your external world? That is your ultimate quick reflection on if you're loving yourself. Do you feel it reciprocated? So I just love that. What is truly loving yourself is learning how to help yourself grow and what that takes and being willing to love yourself to actually do it.
Wow. What a powerful message. I think we need to end it right there. Actually, I'm just like
Yeah, that's perfect.
yeah, it's a perfect wrap around like when things go back to the beginning
Yeah.
of right, like if you could go back and tell yourself anything, it would be to like, hey, get to know yourself, right? And then acknowledging in this journey that we've been on here today of just like that's really freaking brave.
Yeah. And it's such a beautiful gift because when you do, then you know how to protect yourself in a way that you get to connect with everyone outside of you. And that is, I feel like the biggest high we can get to love yourself enough that you know how to let people close enough that you get to feel love from somebody else in a way that feels good to you. And that love just gets amplified. But it is not easy. It's not easy, but
It's
worth it.
simple, not easy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rose, thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you've imparted here today. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up? Any final,
Just not really on that, but just how much I admire you as a person and just how much you light up any space that you are in. It's just instantly just magical. You are a truly magical being. I admire you. I just have so much adoration for you. I'm just so honored to just talk with you and I just love seeing all the things that you're doing. It's so inspiring. The freedom that you express, the rawness, the realness. It's just life to its core and you just allow it to come out of you and it's a beautiful thing to witness and it gives me more permission to do the same. And what a beautiful gift that is to just let life come through you.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Ketamine Connections. I hope you found our discussion insightful and empowering. Remember that understanding the subconscious mind and how to make the most of ketamine therapy can truly transform someone's healing journey. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to share it with your friends and family and anyone who might benefit from this information. So few people considering ketamine therapy are fully educated about its potential and the impact that it has on the subconscious mind. Your share could be the key element to their transformation. Don't forget to subscribe to Ketamine Connections so that you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I absolutely adore reading your reviews. So your feedback really helps me feel like this is an engaging exercise. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm talking into empty internet space. So your review really helps light me up and also helps me reach more audience. So I would appreciate one if you're willing. And please use the link below to submit any questions or topics that you would like covered. I cannot wait to hear from you and to co-create this journey together. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and embrace the possibilities. that are available in this moment, right here, right now. Thanks so much. See you next time on Ketamine Connections.